Hello and welcome to Footnotes, the Cicerone podcast, a podcast to inspire you about outdoor travel and activities in the UK and across the world. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Amy.
Thank you for joining us for the latest episode, which this week features the highlights of one of our Cicerone live events that we ran during 2020 lockdown as a way to inspire our outdoor community for a time when we can travel again.
This particular live event was all about trekking in Tajikistan and the Pamir Trail with Cicerone author Jan Bakker, who is the author of Cicerone's guidebook to trekking in Tajikistan.
Jan Bakker was born in a village below sea level in the northwest of the Netherlands. He saw his first mountain at age 15 and was instantly sold. Jan is a jack of all trades as far as outdoor adventures are concerned. He worked as an outdoor instructor in Belgium, managed an environmental charity called Respect the Mountains, and sold woolly hats to outdoor stores in Scotland. More recently, he co-founded the very first mountain film festival in Tunisia and has been leading pioneering mountain expeditions in Tajikistan, the Afghan Wakhan Corridor, and Iraqi Kurdistan. He has written articles about his adventures for Sidetracked, Trek and Mountain magazine, and Adventure Travel magazine.
As you're going to hear, Jan is a real expert in trekking in this country, which is the third highest on Earth, which I had no idea about. It didn't occur to me that it's that high up.
Or that mountainous. It's incredibly mountainous. I was really surprised by that.
Yeah, and in the event, Jan was showing us lots of really brilliant maps and photos and that sort of thing. So if you are interested in watching the whole event, you can go to the Cicerone website, www.cicerone.co.uk, and you can find the video recording of the event and see all of his brilliant photos and, see exactly how mountainous it is.
And it's well worth doing that, actually, because until we published the guidebook about trekking in Tajikistan, I just thought Tajikistan sounded quite dull. And I was amazed to see how beautiful it is. So it is really worth looking at Jan's photographs.
And Jan has also, because he takes such brilliant photography, and he has done a photo gallery for us on the Cicerone website in Cicerone Extra. So you can go and look at that as well if you want to be inspired. The thing that I was amazed by is how beautiful the lakes are with that really brilliant blue colour to it, and then the mountainous peaks behind that. I just think they're absolutely beautiful.
Because you might expect Tajikistan to be dry and deserty, but actually there's a huge variation in the sorts of landscape that you see there.
So we spoke to Jan about the practicalities of trekking in this remote area, such as water, staying in homestays, how to stay safe in Tajikistan with it being so remote. And he also gave us some beautiful descriptions of the country, culture, and the landscape. Jan also shared his vision for his latest project, the Pamir Trail, which is a 1,000-kilometer route across Tajikistan. So it was really exciting to hear about that, and you can find out how to support him on that endeavour towards the end of this episode. Welcome to Jan, who is joining us today from Uganda. Hi, Jan.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. So if we run into any technical issues, I think it might be a combination of Cumbrian thunderstorms that we've been having over the past few days and potentially the Ugandan internet.
Yes, so far so good.
So I thought it'd be a really great chance for you to introduce the area and take our audience through an introduction to Tajikistan and the culture and the area.
So many people have not even heard of Tajikistan or don't really know how to place it. So it's this tiny country in the heart of Central Asia. It's west of China, north of Afghanistan, east of Uzbekistan, and south of Kyrgyzstan. So it's really wedged in all stances that are a bit more famous to most people. It's a very mountainous country. In fact, it's 93% of the country is mountainous. Yeah, it's sparse. The mountains are sparsely populated. It has a population of 9.5 million people, but most people live in the lower parts of the country. Most of them in Dushanbe and Khujand, the main cities. The whole eastern part is the Pamirs. It's almost 50% of the country. And there's only 230,000 people living there. So you can imagine it's quite an empty land, this part of Tajikistan. not many people know that it's actually the third highest country in the world. So you've got Bhutan and Nepal, and just behind it is Tajikistan with an average of 3,100 meters. It's quite unbelievable, especially for me coming from below sea level. So yeah, there's mountains wherever you go essentially, and even where it's not considered mountainous, yeah, it's a true paradise for outdoor and mountain tourists. Size-wise, yeah, you can compare it. It's slightly smaller than Wales and England combined. So it's not that big. Although travel times, as you can imagine, it takes a lot longer to go from A to B because the roads are not always in a perfect condition. So landscape-wise, in the guidebook in Trekking in Tajikistan, we divided the mountain areas in the northern ranges and the Pamirs. So I'll start to talk a little bit about the northern ranges. This is the Fan Mountains, probably the most popular part for trekkers in Tajikistan because it's close to Dushanbe. It's 2.5-3 hour drive. And it's a really stunning, compact mountain area with lots of pathways. It's quite a few people roaming these mountains, local people, shepherds. But it's all very steep, lots of steep passes. Really big mountains, over 5,000 meters. And it's a very accessible place to visit. And you can see this lake down here, brilliant lakes. Even the glaciers go to quite low. So you can walk to the snout of a glacier at 3,500 meters. And if you go further east, it becomes a lot greener, lots of precipitation, and yeah, it's a bit like the Alps, but maybe 500 years ago. So it's really, without the gondolas and waymarks, but it looks a lot like the Alps. It's also similar altitude, all around 1,000 meters. The height is just over 5,000, so a little bit higher than Mont Blanc. And also here there's a network of trails, which is ideal for hiking. And if you go further south to the Pamirs, there's also quite a diverse landscape. So Zarojkul, which is a lake at 4,500. That's an area with lots of mountain lakes. Every night you can camp on a different lake, and it's quite stunning. Very lush, lots of glaciers, lots of water. The valleys are very green as well, and no, hardly any people. You can just trek there and not meeting anyone for days. And finally, this photo was taken right on the edge of the Murga Plateau. So that's a high altitude desert. It's a lot drier, as you can see, more flattened out, but everything is above 3,500 meters, and the peaks in the distance are probably over 5,000 meters. So it's a very harsh landscape, lots of wind as well, a lot harder to trek in. Finding water is also a challenge. Finally, this landscape you can only find in the heart of the Pamirs, where the proper high mountains are. So in the background is the highest mountain in Tajikistan, Ismail Somoni, 7,495 meters, taken from about 6,500. And the tents really give scale. So here are the big glaciers. It's a bit comparable to, I guess, the Hindu Kush and the Tian Shan mountains. So it's all part of the same system as well, which they call the Pamir North, where all the greater ranges in Asia come together. Yeah, transportation. There's a big network of trails everywhere in the mountains, carved out by the shepherds, people who travel from village to village, and they take on really big passes. Yeah, you don't have to build trails here; they're there for the hiker to take. But yeah, the mountains are not empty. You will meet quite a few people. You will get invited by these people in their homes, their temporary summer homes. So in the winter, it's too cold to live up there. So they offer you tea or a bowl of yogurt, fresh bread. And although it's quite hard to communicate possibly with them, unless you speak Russian or Tajik or Pamiri, yeah, it's really fun to have a peek into their daily life and see. Yeah, it's quite tough living up there, as you can imagine. There's no fruit, no vegetables. People live off, just milk, meat. So it's quite hard to live up there. But they're very hospitable, and you will have to decline a few invitations for tea, otherwise you won't get anywhere while walking. Which, of course, it's a good thing. It's great to be among the people. Otherwise, the mountains would be quite empty and lonely.
In the guidebook, there is loads of information about safety and accommodation and visas and health precautions and the right kit to take and all of that. But what was the biggest challenge that you actually faced while you were in Tajikistan?
I guess the transport is really hard. So some of the trailheads are very remote, and yeah, it's really hours and hours of driving. So it's either, if you have a bigger budget, you could rent a private vehicle. That makes it easy. At the time of research, I didn't have a lot of money, and I spent 4 months in Central Asia to research. So it was really hard. I found it really hard to get to the trailheads, and you basically have to either find people you share a car with, or you wait for a full week to hop on a bus, the weekly bus, to get to the trailhead. So that's a real challenge. And then you end somewhere that's also remote. Yeah, to plan all that it takes a bit of planning, but and maybe also a bit of budget to. If worse comes to worse, you need to get your international flight that you can actually go back to civilization again. Yeah, that was the biggest challenge.
How do you make sure that you stay safe while you're out there, and also trekking through these remote regions?
Yeah, so generally I would say it's very safe to trek in these mountains. The people are very welcoming, and if you're in trouble, they will help you. And even if you're not in trouble, they still try to help you, and sometimes wonder what you're doing there. But yeah, it is remote, and that is a reality of trekking in Tajikistan. Medical facilities are far away. I did my first research in 2010, and people warned me about wolves and bears, and that was the least of my problems. Drinking water is generally a bit of an issue because there's a lot of livestock. And my personal philosophy is being healthy is being able to take care of yourself. And if you get sick, you could be in a bad place. I think map reading is an essential skill, knowing how to use a map, because you're far away from any phone reception. And the weather is generally a lot better than in Scotland too. Yeah, if you can make it in Scotland, you'll be fine in Tajikistan, I would say. Also, one thing I would mention is that trails can be quite treacherous, because in springtime, there's quite a few landslides, avalanches, and they can take out a path. Now, I would say always go for your own judgment and make sure you're okay with going into this treacherous section of trail.
If it's more treacherous in the springtime, when is the best time to actually go?
That's a good question. It's actually more treacherous in springtime, because then you've got all the snow melt. The river levels are very high, so crossing a river would be quite challenging. Bridges may have been taken out, and as such, landslides occur quite often. Yeah, that makes it quite a hard time to go. So I would say the second half of June until September, maybe even October, is the best time. I think September is the best month to go, because it's quite empty, the rivers are low, passes are snow-free.
It doesn't seem like the sort of place that you want to go solo trekking.
That's what I did the first 4 months, and it was actually, yeah. And in some parts of the mountains, you're not alone in the sense that you meet a lot of local people. But when you go alone, of course, you need to plan it really well. It's all about planning, because there's no shops around the corner. You need to plan your food, but you can't take too much, obviously, because you need to carry everything yourself. And it's sustained hiking at high altitude, crossing some passes, maybe bad terrain. I think if you plan it, it's a delight, actually.
If you're interested in discovering Tajikistan yourself, head over to the Cicerone website, where you can get 25% discount off the guidebook. Type in Pamir 25 with a capital P at the checkout. We hope you enjoy reading the guidebook and discovering Tajikistan.
You co-authored the guidebook with Christine Oriel. She's the co-director of an organisation called Women Rocking Pamirs, which trains women up to be trekking guides and encourages women to go trekking in Tajikistan. Do you think as a woman it's necessary to be part of a group like that to go to Tajikistan, or can you do it? I guess
there's no doubt Tajikistan can be a challenging place for a solo woman to travel. It's quite a conservative country, and I think Christine's organization, it's an amazing initiative, and it also empowers women to become guides. And I think, breaking that gender bias, I think it's a wonderful initiative, and it's quite successful. Necessary? I don't think it's necessary. There are quite a few reputable local trekking companies, and they either have male or female guides, and in both ways, it's you can trust them to take women, either solo or a group of women, safely through the mountains.
Maybe as a wider question then, do you think, you talked about like how difficult it can be to plan this sort of trip, and I imagine for your first 4-month trip you didn't go with a tour operator, but would you suggest that people do that?
Yeah, it opens quite a few doors. Also, the language is quite a barrier, and if you want to know more about the way people live, what people are doing in the mountains, how they live in wintertime, obviously it opens a conversation with the locals. Also, it's as I said before, the terrain can be quite treacherous, and the local guides, the local companies, they know where a bridge has been washed away or where a part of the trail has disappeared. The local economy benefits from people who are hiring porters and guides and cooks. So I would always encourage for a better experience and to boost the local economy, to hire a local team, and it's good fun.
Yeah, and that kind of sense of supporting the local economy is something that you're really pushing to do with the Pamir Trail, isn't it? Which we're going to talk about, I guess, shortly, actually. But yeah, in terms of supporting the local community as well, they seem like a very hospitable people, and that you might have an opportunity to have a kind of homestay. Could you explain how that works and how that benefits the locals?
To sleep in various places in very remote parts of the Pamirs, but also to generate extra income, tourism income for remote places, because obviously hard cash is very welcome in these places where cash is not really available. People live off agriculture, and if something breaks, then it's often a big problem. I think homestays is a perfect way to introduce the tourists to show the way of living in the mountains, and they benefit from it by just earning money, essentially. Inside it, you can see it's warm. They always have a heater going, drinking local tea, sometimes yak butter tea, because yaks are quite common in this area, just like in Tibet. And enjoying local food as well. You basically sleep with there's one area where the guests stay, so you might be sharing it with a bunch of other people. But yeah, you can share stories, and I think it adds to the experience. And then, sometimes when you're stuck for accommodation and people notice, they will take you in. Yeah, the hospitality is really in their DNA, and if they see it's late in the day, you have no place to stay, you probably have no tent with you, they will invite you in, first for a tea, and then they ask you whether you want to stay. And before it, you spend the night in somebody's home, which is quite unimaginable in many places where we are from. And even if you pay for it, it's very cheap. You get dinner, breakfast, and a night stay for $15 to $20 per person. And then you can really experience what you can see what people's life is about.
And I guess if you stay with a family or a community and it's not a kind of formal homestay, is it good practice to leave something for them as way of thanks?
They will refuse the offer, but yeah, you have to find a way to. What we always did was we just left it in a corner so they would find it, because they will refuse. You ask 3 times, they still refuse, or you give it to the oldest child, just to leave the equivalent basically of what you would pay at a homestay, so about $15, $20.
Yeah, we've got quite a lot of questions actually from the audience. You mentioned that water is difficult to get hold of, but how do you do that? How do you get a daily water supply when you're out in the...
Yeah, just make sure you do follow rivers quite a lot. In the eastern Pamirs, it's quite hard, but like in the central Pamirs and also in the Fen Mountains, it's quite easy to find water. The only thing is that obviously where there's a lot of people with livestock, the water will probably be contaminated. So you need to purify it or filter it in order to make sure it's safe. Because quite a few people I know have become sick just because of the water.
We're going to talk next about the Pamir Trail. This has been something that you've been thinking about through lockdown. So I wonder if you could talk us through what it is, your vision for it.
There is such a vast network of trails all across the Tajik mountains. I thought how amazing it would be just to do a full traverse of the Tajik mountains from the northwest near the Uzbek border, right across to the Wakhan Corridor, where the border with Afghanistan is. I have a map. This is a map 1 to 500,000. It's made by Marcus Hauser. And there were all these dotted lines that indicated there were trekking routes, and you could all connect them. And that's also a little bit what we've done with the guidebook. So people can create their own longer trek. And as an extension of that, I thought, wow, it is possible to stay in the mountains for over 1,000 kilometers. I measured it was about 67 stages and 25 kilometers vertical ascent. So I tried, what I tried to do online is just to see if I could connect the dots between the areas that I already know and the areas that are still unknown. And it's a bit of a challenge, but it's not as hard as you would think it is. And the reason why I wanted to have a branded trail is that you've got trekking routes like Everest Base Camp and even the Great Himalaya Trail, the Jordan Trail. So there's so many branded trails that get a lot of attention. And for Tajikistan, although we have the book, it's still lots of areas in the Tajik mountains miss out on the tourism dollar. Yeah, I thought, how great would it be if you create a trail that runs along a lot of homestays and places where there's potential for homestays, and create business and employment opportunities for guides, cooks, people with pack animals, because it is possible. You can make this fantastic long distance trail that could benefit the local economy as well. It's going through really high altitude terrain. But there should be trails. I still need to find out research a few areas, but I'm sure we can forge a way through the mountains there. I'm in touch with, what I'm trying to do now is find trail experts who can fill in the blanks on the map for me. We have, through the book research, we already mapped 29 stages, primarily in the central and southern Pamirs and in the eastern part of the Zarojkul range, which is at the left top. But the northern Pamirs and the eastern part of the Zarojkul range is still quite an unknown area for myself. But I'm in touch with a few trail experts who have lived in Tajikistan, and they know the place much better than me. So I intend to work with others to make this amazing trail happening. I don't know everything. And I also have a family. I live in Kampala. I have a family here, so I can't just go away for another 4 months. So yeah, I'm looking for people to work with. And also I'm looking for some funding because it's remote. And with that lack of time, I probably need to invest in hiring a private vehicle. I also want to employ local guides to also give them a taster of what it's like to guide foreign tourists around in their mountains, and maybe they will get inspired and think of it as a potential job. Yeah, at the moment I claimed pamirtrail.org, and that's going to be the platform I want to share about the project and inspire people to try and do it, the early adopters.
So the biggest challenge at the moment, is it that northern and eastern section?
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge. So next year, here I am again. So next year, I hope I can guide a trip that I was supposed to guide this year in the southern Pamirs. And I will extend my trip and try to go to the northern Pamirs, hook up with some local trail experts and see if we can find an interesting route that goes along the villages that deserve some more traffic from tourists. Yeah, quite exciting.
And I guess so far, have you been doing it, those sections, have you been doing that off the Russian mapping? Those 1 to 50? Yeah. And are they quite up to date in terms of like how much the trails have, I guess all the way through, haven't we talked about the need for planning? And I know that you're planning to be out there in 2021 and 2022 in the summer. So how much preparation have you already done for those trips?
Apart from contacting the people who know the areas that I don't really know, not so much. Because in all honesty, I've been lucky enough to visit Tajikistan 5 times. So for me, it's in some ways it's quite a routine. I can just pack my stuff. I know what I need, and I've got my local contacts as well, which is quite handy. And off I go. But then the planning part is important in terms of just choosing the right route. Otherwise, you waste a lot of time. So that's why I want to hook up with those
So if people want to support you, you've got a GoFundMe fundraiser going.
That would be amazing. So I just want to emphasize that the money is not going to pay tickets, because that's paid for by the companies I work for. It's really about local logistics and going to these remote places to see where we can put homestays, where bridges are needed, where trail maintenance is needed. So to do a first recce survey. And with that, we try to get a good picture with film, photography, and also trail descriptions, just to get to have a package for the second phase, which is empowering locals to become a guide, to become cooks, to work with pack animals. So basically training and building capacity locally. And of course, build bridges and actually do the trail maintenance. But that you need a lot more money for that. So that's the second phase. First, we need to establish this trail and get a definite route.
Collaborating and working with them and trying to be supportive of that local economy.
Yeah, that's the main point. Of course, it's great to have an adventurous trail. If the locals just see all these foreigners passing by and they're not spending any money, or they're not getting involved in the project.
I suppose to bring it back to Tajikistan in general, you mentioned if you can do Scotland, you can do Tajikistan. But if people can't get there at the moment for travel reasons and restrictions, what would you say people could do to either train for Tajikistan or experience something similar? Or is it just a completely unique experience?
I think the closest near Europe is Morocco, probably terrain-wise. Morocco in springtime, not necessarily Morocco in summer. But I think if you train on your local hill, it's all about the fitness and practicing packing your rucksack, practicing actually going out with your rucksack, go camping somewhere and find a routine, because it's all about routine and finding what works best for you, also equipment-wise, because of course if your boots don't really fit properly, or the rucksack doesn't really fit properly. So it's all, you just need to do a few practice runs on your local hills and make sure you're fit, but don't overtrain, because I know plenty of people who train too hard for this kind of stuff, and then they get injured and they can't go on track. Train sensibly a few times a week, not too much.
Don't overdo it.
Don't overdo it, no.
What are you most looking forward to when you get back to Tajikistan?
I guess just waking up in my tent, opening the tent, seeing a fantastic mountain landscape with nobody around. That's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah. The solitude and the remoteness, that's the environment I'd love to be in. Yeah.
I guess you can try and experience that by finding a nice remote hill somewhere.
Yeah, adventure is really around the corner. And in Kampala, it's a bit harder. But even here, you go across the lake with a boat and you can find some quiet spots. And I'm sure in Britain and another place in Europe, it's not different. Yeah, just have to keep your eyes open.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to us about trekking in Tajikistan and the Pamir Trail. And I hope people have been inspired.
I hope so too. It was a pleasure, Amy. Thank you for having me.
That was Jan Bakker talking about trekking in Tajikistan and his vision for the Pamir Trail. You can support Jan and the creation of the Pamir Trail by donating to his GoFundMe fundraiser, which will be www.gofundme.com/creating the Pamir Trail across Tajikistan. I imagine if you search for it, that will come up. We can put a link in the show notes for that. You can also find out about the progress of the Pamir Trail on pamirtrail.org and also on the Pamir Trail's Instagram account @PamirTrail.
Thank you for listening to this latest episode of Footnotes, the Cicerone podcast. You can find out more about our upcoming live events at cicerone.co.uk/events. To keep up to date with the podcast, you can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or iTunes, Google Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Or for all information, go to the Cicerone website.
You can let us know what you think of the podcast by leaving us reviews on your podcast platform or by emailing us live@cicerone.co.uk. And if you have any authors that you'd like to hear from or particular questions that you'd like us to explore, do let us know. In the meantime, you can keep up with all things Cicerone by going to the Cicerone website, where we have over 1,000 articles. You can check out our full range of guidebook titles there and also sign up to our newsletter. You can search for @Cicerone Press on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, and you can also join our Facebook community, Cicerone Connect, to connect with other outdoor enthusiasts.
We hope you enjoy listening to Footnotes, the Cicerone podcast, and that you are inspired to set out and explore the outdoors. We'll see you next time.